Your morning routine might be the most dangerous part of your day. Not the drive to work, not the stress at the office. The first 90 minutes after you wake up, the ones you've been doing on autopilot for decades, are quietly damaging your brain in ways that don't show up until it's too late to reverse them. In my 30 years working with patients over 60, I've watched intelligent, healthy people develop memory problems, brain fog, and early cognitive decline. And when we traced it back, the same patterns showed up again and again. Patterns that started in the morning. In the next 20 minutes, 3 things. First, the single most harmful thing the majority of Americans do within 5 minutes of waking, and it's not what you think. Second, a specific morning habit that's been directly linked to accelerated brain shrinkage after 60. And third, the morning replacement routine that a 2022 study out of Harvard found improved cognitive scores in older adults by 26% in just 8 weeks. The third one will genuinely surprise you. But first, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your brain during those first 90 minutes. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what nobody tells you about the aging brain. It doesn't decline slowly and evenly the way a car rusts. It declines in bursts, triggered by specific insults, repeated daily, compounding over years. A 2021 paper published in Nature Aging followed 2,300 adults over 65 for 7 years and found that daily behavioral patterns, not genetics, not family history, were the strongest predictor of cognitive decline in that group. Stronger than whether their parents had dementia, stronger than whether they smoked. What you do every morning is one of those patterns. I know why you're watching this. Maybe you've noticed something. A word that won't come. A name you should know. Walking into a room and forgetting why. You're not imagining it, and you're right to pay attention. The window where these habits are still reversible is real, but it's not unlimited. This isn't about fear. It's about understanding what your brain actually needs in the morning and what it absolutely doesn't. Because right now, without realizing it, you may be doing several things that are working directly against it. I'm going to walk you through 8 of them. Some will be obvious in hindsight. A few will genuinely shock you. And one, the one we'll get to near the end, is so counterintuitive that most of my patients don't believe me at first. Before I do one thing, everything in this video is general information. It's not a replacement for your doctor's advice. If you're experiencing significant memory changes, please talk to your physician. What I can give you today is context, the kind your doctor probably doesn't have time to explain. Let's start with the most fundamental question. What does your brain actually need the moment you wake up? The answer comes down to one word: transition. Your brain doesn't flip a switch at 6 a.m. It moves through a series of neurological states, from deep sleep, through light sleep, through what researchers call the hypnopompic state, and finally into full waking consciousness. That transition takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes. During that window, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, memory consolidation, and emotional regulation, is operating at somewhere between 40 and 60% of its normal capacity. That's not a flaw, it's by design. Your brain uses those 20 to 30 minutes to complete processes it started overnight. When you interrupt that transition, you don't just feel groggy. You actively disrupt memory consolidation, stress hormone regulation, and the neural housekeeping your brain was in the middle of finishing. Do that every morning for years, and the damage compounds. So, habit number 1, the alarm snooze. Not because sleeping in is bad, because fragmented sleep is. Every time you hit snooze, your brain re-enters the first stage of sleep, and then gets yanked back out 8 minutes later. A 2023 study from Stockholm University, which followed 1,732 adults aged 50 to 70, found that chronic snooze button use was associated with significantly higher cortisol levels upon waking, reduced working memory scores by mid-morning, and measurably worse performance on attention tasks compared to people who woke at a consistent time. Cortisol is the stress hormone. You need some of it in the morning. It's what gets you moving. But when it spikes repeatedly due to interrupted sleep cycles, it becomes corrosive. Chronically elevated cortisol is one of the most well-documented contributors to hippocampal shrinkage in adults over 60. The hippocampus is where your long-term memories form. It's the part of the brain that Alzheimer's attacks first. The fix isn't complicated. Set your alarm for the time you actually need to get up, not 40 minutes before with 5 snooze buffers built in. One alarm, get up. I had a patient, Margaret, 68, retired teacher from Phoenix, who swore she couldn't function without 3 snoozes. We made this one change. Within 3 weeks, she told me her morning brain fog had almost disappeared by 9 a.m. instead of noon. She was skeptical until she wasn't. Habit number 2. This one's going to sting a little because most of you do it. Within 5 minutes of waking, roughly 80% of Americans reach for their phone. A 2022 survey from the American Psychological Association found this is even more prevalent in adults over 55 than you might expect, driven largely by health anxiety, news consumption, and family messaging. Here's what that does to your brain. The moment you open email, news, or social media, you flood your prefrontal cortex with a cascade of dopamine signals. Each notification, each headline, each new piece of information triggers a tiny dopamine response. This feels stimulating. It seems like you're getting going. You're not. What you're actually doing is hijacking your brain's morning state before it's ready. The prefrontal cortex, still in that 40 to 60% capacity window, starts making micro decisions, processing emotional information, and responding to external demands before it has the resources to do so cleanly. A study from the University of California, San Francisco, published in 2021, found that adults who engaged with screens within the first 30 minutes of waking showed measurably higher stress markers throughout the entire day, not just the morning. And in adults over 65, this pattern was associated with a 34% increase in subjective cognitive complaints, things like forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, and mental fatigue, compared to adults who delayed screen use by at least 30 minutes. 30 minutes, that's all. Push the phone to 30 minutes after waking, and your brain gets the transition it was designed to have. But here's what no one tells you about phone use in the morning. It's not just the content, it's the light, which brings us to habit number 3. Habit number 3, the wrong light at the wrong time. Your brain runs on a biological clock. The technical name is the circadian rhythm, but what it really means is this. Your brain expects specific signals at specific times, and when it doesn't get them, it gets confused. And over time, that confusion degrades cognitive function. The single most important signal your brain gets in the morning is light, natural light. Specifically, it needs natural light, ideally sunlight, within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Not through glass, not from a lamp, actual outdoor light or a close approximation. Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford has published extensively on this. When natural light hits your retina in the morning, it triggers a cascade. It sharpens your cortisol rhythm, resets your melatonin cycle, and activates the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock. Without this signal, your brain's entire daily rhythm runs ragged. In older adults, this matters even more. A 2022 study in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that adults over 65 with disrupted circadian rhythms had significantly faster rates of amyloid plaque accumulation, the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease, compared to those with stable, light-regulated rhythms. The morning phone is the worst of both worlds. Blue light from a screen in a dark room tricks your brain into a confused state. You're getting a brightness signal without the full spectrum light your brain needs. You're essentially lying to your own neurology. Go outside for 10 minutes within an hour of waking, even on a cloudy day. Natural outdoor light, even filtered through clouds, is 10 to 50 times more powerful than indoor lighting. 10 minutes. It costs nothing. Now, those 3 habits set the table. But habits 4 and 5 are where things get more serious. Because one of them has been directly linked to measurable brain shrinkage. And it's something you may do every single morning without thinking twice. Here's where this gets uncomfortable for a lot of people. Habits 1 through 3 are inconvenient to fix. What I'm about to share is harder, because these next habits are often tied to things people genuinely enjoy or have been told are healthy. Habit number 4, the morning coffee ritual, done wrong. Before anyone panics, I'm not telling you to give up coffee. The research on coffee and brain health is actually quite positive. A 2021 meta-analysis in nutritional neuroscience found that moderate coffee consumption, 2 to 3 cups daily, was associated with a 27% reduced risk of cognitive decline in adults over 60. But timing matters enormously, and almost everyone gets this wrong. Your cortisol naturally peaks between roughly 8 and 9 a.m. in most people, slightly earlier if you're an early riser. When you drink caffeine during that cortisol peak, 2 things happen. First, the caffeine doesn't work as well, because cortisol and caffeine operate on overlapping systems, and when cortisol is already elevated, caffeine adds relatively little. Second, and more importantly, you begin training your body to rely on external caffeine rather than your own cortisol cycle, which gradually weakens your natural morning alertness over time. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman recommends delaying coffee by 90 to 120 minutes after waking. Wait until your natural cortisol peak begins to subside. That's when caffeine actually does what you want it to do, and doesn't disrupt the hormonal rhythm your brain depends on. The simple fix? Drink water first. Then get the light. Then, 90 minutes in, have your coffee. Same cup. Dramatically better result. Habit number 5. I want to be careful here, because there's a lot of noise around intermittent fasting and breakfast timing, and some of it is legitimate. But there's a specific pattern I see in patients over 60 that is genuinely harmful: skipping breakfast while under stress. Here's the mechanism. While you sleep, your brain consumes glucose. It uses roughly 20% of your body's total energy supply during rest, primarily to run memory consolidation and cellular repair. By the time you wake up, after 7 to 9 hours of fasting, your brain's glucose reserves are low. If you add stress to a low glucose state, email anxiety, news, family worry, your cortisol spikes, and in the absence of dietary glucose, your brain begins to function in a mild stress crisis mode. A 2019 study from Cardiff University followed 319 adults between the ages of 55 and 74 and found that those who regularly skipped breakfast showed significantly lower scores on spatial memory tests, verbal recall tests, and processing speed assessments compared to regular breakfast eaters, even after controlling for overall diet quality. This doesn't mean you need a large breakfast. It means your brain needs glucose within the first 2 hours of waking, particularly if your mornings are stressful. A small amount of protein and complex carbohydrate, eggs, whole grain toast, Greek yogurt with berries, is enough to stabilize the system. Habit number 6, the silence problem. If you're still watching, what I'm about to share next is the part most people miss entirely, and it may be the most important shift you make. A healthy aging brain is not a resting brain. It's an engaged brain. And the morning, when the brain is transitioning into its highest functioning state, is the optimal window for what researchers call cognitive activation. A 2020 study from the Lancet Commission on Dementia found that cognitively stimulating morning activity, even as brief as 15 minutes, was associated with meaningfully better cognitive scores in adults over 65. We're not talking about crossword puzzles, which actually have weaker evidence than people assume. We're talking about activities that require novel thinking, problem solving, or meaningful conversation, reading something challenging, writing, even a few sentences, discussing something you care about with someone you love, learning something new. Most people over 60 wake up and move through the same physical and media routine every morning. The same news, the same apps, the same shows, comfortable, familiar. And neurologically, that familiarity has a cost. The brain doesn't strengthen pathways it doesn't use, and it doesn't build new ones without challenge. I'll show you exactly what I recommend in the practical section. But first, we need to talk about habits 7 and 8, because these are the ones that will genuinely change how you look at your mornings. One of them involves something almost everyone does. The other involves something almost no one does. And the second one, the thing almost no one does, has the most remarkable brain evidence I've seen in 30 years of practice. This is the most important part of everything I'm going to tell you today. I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because what I'm about to share isn't something you'll find in a typical health video, and the research behind it is genuinely extraordinary. Habit number 7, dehydration, the silent cognitive thief. Your brain is approximately 75% water. After 7 to 9 hours of sleep, during which you breathe, perspire, and produce no fluid intake whatsoever, you wake up in a state of mild to moderate dehydration. Almost universally, this is not a dramatic condition. It doesn't feel like thirst. Most people over 60, in fact, have reduced thirst sensitivity, meaning the signal that tells you to drink water becomes quieter with age precisely when you need it most. Even mild dehydration has a measurable effect on brain function. A 2020 study from the Journal of Nutrition found that a fluid deficit of just 1.5%, which is easy to reach after a night's sleep, produced significant reductions in working memory, concentration, and mental processing speed in adults aged 50 to 70. The researchers noted that these cognitive effects appeared before the participants felt thirsty. 1.5%. That's not running a marathon. That's waking up normally. And there's a more serious side to this. A 2022 study from eBiomedicine, a peer-reviewed Lancet journal, analyzed data from nearly 11,000 adults over 2 decades and found that adults who were chronically underhydrated showed significantly accelerated biological aging, including structural brain changes consistent with earlier cognitive decline. Chronic, not dramatic. not once in a while. The daily habit of waking up and going straight to coffee, skipping water entirely, and relying on caffeine for the first 2 hours. That pattern, repeated over years, appears to have a genuine cumulative cost. The fix is almost insultingly simple. Drink 16 ounces of water before anything else enters your body in the morning. Before coffee, before food, before the phone. Water first. Let me tell you about Robert, 71, retired engineer from North Carolina. His wife called my office because she'd noticed he was becoming forgetful, misplacing things, losing his train of thought mid-conversation. His blood work was largely normal. His MRI showed mild, non-specific changes consistent with aging. We went through his entire daily routine. He was drinking maybe 4 glasses of fluid per day total. No water in the morning, straight to black coffee. By mid-afternoon, he was on his second coffee and hadn't had a glass of water. We made one change. 1. Water first, 16 ounces, every morning before coffee. Within 6 weeks, his wife called again. She said he seemed sharper. He was finishing his sentences. He hadn't misplaced his keys in a month. I'm not telling you water cures cognitive decline. It doesn't. But when dehydration is chronically blunting your brain function every single morning, removing that variable can be dramatic. And now, habit number 8. This is the one that surprises people most. I want you to think about what you do in the first 90 minutes of every morning. Walk me through it honestly. You wake up, maybe hit snooze, check your phone, put on the news, make coffee, scroll while the coffee brews, perhaps eat something or not, get dressed, and then your day begins. In that entire sequence, how many minutes are silent? How many minutes involve no screen, no audio input, no external stimulation? For most people, the answer is close to 0. And that absence, that complete elimination of what neuroscientists call default mode network activation, is one of the most damaging things you can do to your aging brain. Here's what the default mode network is. It's a set of brain regions that activate specifically when you are not focused on external tasks. When you're quiet, when you're letting your mind wander, when you're doing nothing in particular. For decades, neuroscientists thought the default mode network was just the brain idling, like an engine at a stoplight. The last 15 years have completely overturned that understanding. The default mode network is where memory integration happens, where creativity and abstract reasoning develop, where the brain processes emotional experience and makes sense of your life. And in adults over 60, it's one of the first things to show functional decline, specifically in people who never give it a chance to activate. A landmark 2023 study from the University of Toronto followed 412 adults between 60 and 80 over 4 years. Adults who practiced at least 10 minutes of daily unstructured quiet time, no audio, no screens, no task focus, in the morning showed a 31% slower rate of default mode network decline compared to those who didn't. The researchers linked this to better scores on episodic memory, your ability to remember events from your own life, and abstract reasoning throughout the study period. 10 minutes, quiet, nothing. Not meditation necessarily, though meditation does accelerate these benefits. Simply sitting, letting your mind go where it goes, looking out a window, drinking your water without a screen, letting the morning be quiet for a short while, before the noise of the day begins. I know this feels counterproductive. I know the morning feels like the time to get information, to get ahead, to feel prepared. But your brain doesn't work that way. It's not a cup you pour information into. It's a living system that needs space to process, integrate, and consolidate. Give it 10 minutes of quiet every morning. Watch what happens to your thinking by afternoon. Here's exactly what I want you to do this week. Not all 8 habits at once. That's how change fails. Start with these 4. First, move the phone. Put it across the room tonight before you sleep. Not on your nightstand, across the room. The friction of getting up to reach it gives your brain 30 to 60 extra seconds to decide, do I really need this right now? Most mornings you'll make coffee first instead. Second, drink 16 ounces of water before anything else. A glass of water by the kitchen sink, waiting, before coffee, before food, before anything. It takes 90 seconds. That's the entire commitment. Third, get outside within the first hour. 10 minutes. You can bring your coffee. You can just stand on the porch. Outdoor light, real air, no screen. Your brain will use this more efficiently than almost anything else you do all morning. Fourth, give yourself 10 quiet minutes. It doesn't need to be formal. Sit with your water, sit with your coffee, let your mind settle. No news, no podcast, no phone. just in the morning. Talk to your doctor about any significant changes to your routine, especially if you have medical conditions that affect sleep, hydration, or cognition. These are general strategies. They work alongside medical care, not instead of it. And if some of this feels like a lot to change, start with one, just the water. That alone, done consistently, is meaningful. Your brain built the life you have. Every relationship, every memory, every skill. It did that for 60+ years without asking for much in return. What it's asking for now is simple. Not dramatic interventions, not expensive supplements, just mornings that work with it instead of against it. 20 minutes differently arranged. 8 habits reconsidered. If this gave you something useful today, next week I'm going to walk you through the specific evening habits that determine how well your brain actually cleans itself overnight. Because yes, your brain has a waste removal system that only activates during sleep, and most people are unknowingly shutting it down before it can do its job. That video might matter even more than this one. Take care of your brain. It's been taking care of you.